All right. Good evening, everybody. It is the Safety and the Sportswriter show with Knoxville Nate and Big Joe coming to you on Super Bowl weekend, the last week of the year for football, for NFL football. It is, like I always say, the bittersweet weekend because we're going to say goodbye to our coveted Sundays of watching football for a while. It'll go heavy into the draft now, and we'll get a lot into that and college and what's going on there. Before we want to get into the NFL or the Super Bowl preview, plus touch on now we know where the NFL coaches are most likely going. I think Clint Kubak's the only one who isn't committed totally, or has he committed?
You mean for the Raiders?
Yeah. Is he 99% sure?
I think he's 99% sure. I just don't know if I don't think he's signed the contract yet. I don't believe.
All right. Well, we'll get into that at the end of the broadcast after we do Super Bowl. But before we go, right now, the Luka Doncic trade with the Lakers, now that street clothes is now in Washington, it's got to go down as one of the worst moves in the history of the NBA if you're the Dallas Mavericks, because you got nothing out of moving your best player. I can't think of a trade in recent memory that worked out worse for a team. I don't know. What about you?
There may be a worse trade that I'm not thinking of, but I certainly don't know what it is. GM Nico Harrison, got fired, and he should have been fired before this happened. Just think, if they had Luka, Cooper Flag, Kyrie was healthy, and the pieces that they had, they went to the finals the year before.
Right.
Okay. And then the year after, he trades away a generational player who's tearing it up, by the way, right now for the Lakers. And the only player who the Mavericks got from the trade who's still on the roster is Max Christie. So you're essentially, if you've traded Luka Doncic for Max Christie, and Max is a decent player. He's a rotational guy who's all right, but trading away one of the greatest players in the NBA for Max Christie essentially is a joke. And we said this at the time, if you recall. We couldn't believe that this happened. No one could. And now it looks even worse. And if you go and look at what Luka's done this season, he's averaging almost 34 points a game, 8 rebounds and 9 assists, while shooting 48% from the floor. I don't know who else is coming anywhere close to those numbers. And the Lakers are messing with the lineup around him, but certainly at 30-19 with a second-year coach, the Lakers are doing all right. And since LeBron has gotten back to health, they've looked like a possible contender in the West. They're in first place in the Pacific Division right now, and all systems are go. But they essentially traded a generational superstar for one rotational player, Max Christie. Too bad first round draft picks and an unknown pick, from the Lakers. So they basically traded Luka for the same value that Memphis got for Jaren Jackson. And that has to be the worst trade in NBA history, in my opinion. If someone can think of another one that's worse, please let me know, because I don't know what it is.
All right. Well, I just had to bring that up when I heard that yesterday. I was flabbergasted. I was just like, this is ridiculous. This is why, some teams in the NBA, I mean, Dallas, when Cuban was there and Dirk, and, they had their run, but outside of that, they seem to always be dysfunctional to me. And this is just another part of their dysfunction. So let's get into the Super Bowl. To surprise, I won't say Seattle's such a surprise. The Patriots are definitely a surprise, a great story, maybe one of the best stories in the NFL in a long time. Both of them came through. Both quarterbacks are currently dinged up, but as Mike Vrabel, I don't know if he was doing a Belichick when I saw him in the interview when he sat there and said, "Well, everybody's dinged up now." You go, what do you want me to say? So I'm sure he'll play. What is the most surprising aspect about the two opponents in the Super Bowl for you?
I guess the biggest surprise is how fast both of these teams have gotten to where they are. You're talking about year 2 of Coach McDonald for the Seahawks, year 1, obviously, for Mike Vrabel and the Patriots. I'm not surprised at all that Mike Vrabel's done a good job and has the Patriots playing well. I am surprised that he took a 4-13 team and swapped it and made it 14-3. That's just truly unbelievable what he has done. And then figuring out a way to win in the playoffs when you're on the road. This team hasn't lost a road game all year long. No NFL team has ever done that in the history of the league. And let's be honest, it's not like they were playing crap teams. They beat a pretty good Chargers team. They beat the best defense in all of the NFL and the Texans. And then they beat the Broncos, on the road, the number 1 seed. So I guess the number one thing that surprises me is the speed that the Seahawks have turned around the franchise, and obviously how quickly Vrabel has done this in year 1 without really flipping the roster a whole lot. I mean, he's brought in a bunch of kind of his guys, but no like major superstars to make this thing happen.
Well, the other thing, you brought up a good point, and the other thing that we heard going into the playoffs was the fact that the Patriots didn't play anybody during the season, but they weren't supposed to be anything special either. So it's either one way or the other. They played over their heads, or they're better than the people expect them to be, and I think it's a little bit of both. Drake May got a lot of, even though he got beat up a lot, he got a lot of experience when Mayo was the head coach of the Patriots. Not good experiences, maybe, but he learned from it. He was in there learning. He didn't get injured, which is the biggest point. You know what I mean? He survived the baptism under fire, and he, when he came back with the direction of Vrabel, he showed he could get better. When I look around at these teams, outside of the wide receiver of the Seahawks, like you say, they're lunch pail average players. I mean, I don't know who else on the Seahawks would you put up and on a superstar level or all pro level.
On a super, I mean, well, I guess you have to put Eamon Worry on that level now, but that's a guy who's a rookie, and nobody thought that he would be where he is. I mean, he's one of the best rookies in the entire NFL, and nobody saw that coming. I mean, he was a good player coming out of South Carolina, and certainly was worthy of getting drafted. But did I think that he would turn into one of the best defensive players in all of football? No. Now, he was drafted, I think he was the 3rd pick in the 2nd round, so it's not like he was a 7th rounder or something, but still, for the 3rd pick in the 2nd round to be one of the best players in all of football is pretty amazing on the defensive sides. But other than that, you got Cooper Kupp, who was basically a guy who nobody wanted. You've got, Kenneth Walker, who's a really, really good running back, but has even, stepped up his game in the playoffs. And then really the defense is honestly a bunch of no names that, they acquired through I just like the way they built this team. John Schneider's done a great job of building through the draft, B, adding some guys through, free agency, and then also, doing a little bit of trading to make it work. And that defensive line is a perfect example of that, where he's got Leonard Williams, who they acquired in the trade, Jamarcus Lawrence, who they got in free agency, and then Byron Murphy and Derek Hall, who they drafted. So he's done a phenomenal job. And I think the biggest thing that Coach McDonald has done is get the most out of this group, because there isn't like all pro guys on this team at all. And the other thing that's to be commended is the way they built this offensive line. With a couple of other guys that nobody's really ever heard of. A few guys Charles Cross obviously is a dude they drafted high, and he has lived up to the billing. But the rest of these guys, they've done the same thing. They've got a couple in free agency. They signed one guy off the street, and then obviously this year drafted Gray Zabel.
All right, let's stick with Seattle here, breaking down their offense. What do you think is going to be the main factor? What do they have to do? Is the running game keep it out? Darnold, for all his past sins, the last 3 years has improved immensely. I'm not going to say he's a top 5 quarterback, but I think he's knocking on the top 10 if you look at his last 3 years. I was never a big fan of his, so I'm not going to say I saw this coming, but he did the work. God bless him. He's still young, and he has time to actually make a good career for himself, and it is making a good career. But still, I think the thought process is going to be play action, strong running game. Don't want him to feel like he has to take it all on his shoulders. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's the key is just letting him be comfortable, and the comfort level is going to come if Kenneth Walker continues to run the football. He's run the ball for almost 200 yards in the playoffs. He's averaged 4.7 yards per carry in the playoffs, and he scored 4 touchdowns. That's in 2 games. So that's pretty impressive to score 4 touchdowns in 2 games. And Sam Darnold's thrown 4 touchdown passes with no interceptions. I mean, that was been the big knock on Darnold all year long, is that he's turned the ball over more than any other quarterback in all of the NFL. And that was really the only thing he was doing wrong. And if you look at the end of the season, he's kind of cleaned that up. In the playoffs, he hasn't turned the ball over at all. And that's been the difference. So if they can run the ball and take some of the pressure off of him, that'll be huge. Now they're missing Zach Charbonnet, who's injured, and I don't think is going to be playing. But the big thing is they've figured out a way to kind of manufacture the running game, even leaning on Kenneth Walker, but then figuring out other ways, running reverses to Rashid Shaheed and bubble screens and things like that. He's the guy that has been the biggest difference maker, in my opinion. He brought in, and kind of an unheralded player who only had 59 catches in the regular season, but towards the end of the year and in the playoffs, he's been lights out, and he's just a guy that has speed. He's a guy that they use as a they can hand it to, they can throw it to, and then he's also been used in special teams, running back punts and kicks, which has made a big difference. And what did he really do in New Orleans while he was there? He showed some flashes, but he hasn't. He just wasn't on a good team really, so it was hard to tell if he could be a difference maker. And kudos to John Schneider for going out grabbing this guy. This year. He played 9 games for New Orleans, and now he's played 9 games for Seattle, and he's certainly been the difference.
Okay, what do you think about the Patriot offense? Drake May, how dinged up is he? Is going to be the first question. But can they counter with a running game of their own, so they can hide if he is a little dinged up? How much do you think Diggs will be brought into the offense going into on their side?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are talking about how the Patriots offense has struggled in the playoffs. But if you think about it, they've played the last 2 games in the snow. And so the numbers, in my opinion, are a little bit skewed because
against great defenses.
Yeah, they were playing unbelievable defenses in the Broncos, and then also a great defense in the Texans. And then the Chargers are a good team too. But, when they played the Texans, that was a game where it was just everybody was turning the ball over. I think CJ had 4 interceptions. I think Drake May turned it over 3 times, but it was the bar. You know how it is when it gets really cold and the snow's coming down, the ball gets heavy, it gets slick, and then it becomes a problem. And I think that's that's part of the issue. But their defense stepped up and got it done, and they scored enough points in that Broncos game to win. So that's what matters. How hurt he is, I don't really know because they're not telling us. But I think if he was too hurt that he wouldn't play. I think he'll be fine. I think they've obviously leaned on Ramondre Stevenson pretty hard this year, and they've also got Travion Henderson, the rookie out of Ohio State, who's come on strong. But in the postseason, it's been a big dose of Ramondre Stevenson. He's carried the ball 51 times for 200 yards, and obviously, is averaging about 4 yards a carry. The big thing though is Drake May. He's carried the ball 24 times for 141 yards, 6-yard average, and has scored a couple of touchdowns. I think that could be the difference in this game, is if Drake is able to run the football and pick up some first downs with his legs, maybe score a touchdown, inside the red zone. If they've got man coverage and everybody's got their backs to them, that was the difference in the second half of that Broncos game was Drake May running the football with his legs.
That's a good point, because Sam Darnold, that's like the last thing he'll do. He's not going to run unless he has no other options, and that's a lot of times why he gets in interception problems. He hangs on to the ball, he doesn't make a quick decision, and then all of a sudden the defense closes in on him. So that's a really good point with that. How about on the defensive side of the ball for Seattle? What are you going to look for them to do? Who are the players you're going to look to make the difference?
On Seattle, to me, it starts up front with them. They have a tremendous defensive line who, is tough as nails. They've got a lot of guys that, just can do a lot of different things. And it starts to me with Leonard Williams. He's the reason that D-line is what it is. This guy's been a difference maker everywhere he's been. He played for the Giants, and so you got to see him, up close. Mm-hmm. He played for the Jets and was good on both teams, and then finally got himself on a really good team, and he's just gotten even better. The key with this team also is their depth. Each one of those guys on the D-line is good, but they each have a guy that can come in behind him, and I'm talking about Mafe, Brandon Peely, Jerron Reed, and Jared Ivey. All 4 of those guys are backups who have gotten substantial playing time throughout the season, as well as, in the playoffs. But, the guy that makes it all happen is the middle linebacker, Ernest Jones, who was a big, big piece of the Rams, for so many years there. And, came out of South Carolina. He was on that Rams team in 2021 that was so good, that defense. And then he kind of bounced around and ended up in the Titans in 2024, but he only played 6 games and played well in those games, but he kind of got lost in the shuffle. Schneider saw something in him, brought him to the Seahawks, and look what's happened. He finished 2026 with 15 games played. He had over 130 tackles and, has been the leader of that defense. He also has 5 interceptions this year with 150 return yards. That's something that a lot of people didn't pick up on. He's also got 7 passes defensed. So this guy is not only a dude that can stuff the run, call the defense, and get everybody in the right spot. He is also not a liability in coverage. He can cover backs out of the backfield. He can get guys on shallow crossers. He can do a lot of things that you wouldn't think about from a middle linebacker.
How about on the Patriots side of the ball? What do you look for? What's the strength over there? What are they going to have to do?
The strength of the Patriots defense, in my opinion, is just how they play as a unit. There's not one guy that really sticks out and makes it go. It's just a group, and that's how Mike Vrabel likes it. But the dude that really has been coming on strong, and I would say is the game wrecker kind of guy, is Christian Barmore. This guy is just almost indefensible coming out of Alabama. He can get in the backfield and sack the quarterback. He can push the offensive line backwards, and he's just been a lot better, in my opinion, the last few weeks. The way that he's been playing and getting after it. This Christian Barmore guy is a dude that lots of people don't talk about, but he has been the difference over the years. And then another guy that no one really wanted is Chason, the kid out of LSU. He was drafted very high by the Jaguars. I think he went after he played for the Jaguars for a couple of years. I think he actually went to the Titans for a year. Might have been Las Vegas, but he played 1 year on a different team and kind of reinvented himself. I think it was Las Vegas, actually, the Raiders. And Vrabel saw something in him, brought him into New England, and now he's got 7.5 sacks, which is more than he had in his entire career in Jacksonville. And that's this is a pass rusher, and he was in Jacksonville from 2020 to 2024, and he had like 6 sacks. And this year he's got 7.5, and it's not just sacks, but pressures on the quarterback and getting in the backfield and making things happen. So that dude, and mixed with Harold Landry, who obviously has been productive throughout his entire career, with the Titans. Vrabel, once he saw he could get him, he went after him and brought him right in. The question too is Robert Spillane. He's just a lunch pail dude, blue collar kind of guy, and hopefully he's healthy because they need him. Jack Gibbons did a good job filling in for him, but really if they want to win this game, I think they need Robert Spillane to be healthy.
All right, how about special teams in the kicking game? I don't feel either one's or either end of it is a superstar. I mean, maybe you have a different opinion, but where's the edge in the kicking game? Punting, kicking, who's got the better of the game?
Honestly, I think the Seahawks have a little bit of an advantage because they've got a veteran guy, Boreaglis, however you pronounce it, the kicker for the Patriots, has done a pretty decent job this year. But you got to remember he's a rookie. This is his first year ever in the National Football League, and he's now on the biggest stage, in the world. So I kind of worry about him if the game comes down to a field goal. Do you really want to trot out this guy who's 22 years old? He's played 17, 18 football games in his life in the NFL. That kind of concerns me. And then also, as we mentioned before, I think you got to give the edge to the Seahawks with the returnability of Shaheed, the guy that we already talked to about before. He's come up big throughout the playoffs and towards, ever since the Seahawks went out at the trade deadline and brought him in. He's been a difference maker on special teams. So I give the advantage on the special teams definitely to the Seahawks. One thing that we didn't talk about, though, or I didn't talk about, is Christian Gonzalez, the corner for the Patriots. He's finally healthy, and this guy, is one of the best in the business. And I think, he can take away half the field with his ability. So I think he'll be somebody to keep your eye on in this game. If there's anybody that could possibly slow down Jackson Smith and Jigba a little bit, it could potentially be Christian Gonzalez.
All right, let's talk about the coaches. Vrabel has the more experience, but this is his first Super Bowl. He has coached in a championship game before. The Seattle coach, what's his second year? Amazing things he's done in 2 years. A lot of experience as a D coordinator all over the place, successful there. Any advantage to either one? Vrabel's been here as a player. And, when he was there, he had Belichick teaching him how to do things. So who do you think has the advantage there?
Well, Mike McDonald is a young guy for sure. He's only 38 years old, but he's been coaching since 2008. So this guy has been, coaching football for a long time. That being said, I still think if my money's on anybody, it's on Mike Vrabel. I think he's the best coach in the NFL. I've thought that for a long time. Look what he was able to do with Ryan Tannehill at quarterback in Tennessee.
Yeah.
Obviously, he had King Henry, but not much else, and he was able to win football games. So I think that helps. And then let's be honest here. I know a lot of people don't like this guy, but Josh McDaniels has been a tremendous offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
I mean, he won Super Bowls.
If he stayed in his place, no one would never know that he was that. But he was a terrible head coach. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
well,
It's just like
some guys that's just not their thing, and his thing is calling plays for the New England Patriots, and,
right.
and who's doing a better job than him doing that? And I think that's a good thing for the Patriots is they have a guy who's calling plays that's been in this game before. And I think he knows his team very well. He knows what to call, for Drake May. He knows what Drake likes to do. He knows what can get Drake in trouble. And I think he's been developing a game plan, ever since they won the championship.
Who's okay? Well, we'll make our picks at the end. Let's switch over to the coaches that now are pretty much in line. Like we said, the only one is Clint Kubiak, unless he backs out, and I wouldn't blame him if he did. Harbaugh, we've talked about. Stefanski's, we've talked about. Hafley with Miami. He's a guy who's got to go in there and kind of pull a Vrabel and change that whole culture down there, because he's left with a bunch of delinquents who don't seem to want to play football. They just want to play football on Sunday, but don't practice during the week. What do you think about him?
I like Jeff. I really do. I liked him when he was in Columbus. Obviously, got to know him pretty well when he was the defensive coordinator for the Ohio State Buckeyes there for 2 seasons. And, I really do like him and thought he was a big time up and coming guy. But to be honest with you, I was kind of surprised that he was hired by the Dolphins. I guess they wanted to go, with a defensive guy as opposed to an offensive guy, because that didn't really work. But when you think back, what is his head coaching experience?
Boston College.
He was the head coach at Boston College for 2-3 years.
Yeah.
I think he was hired in his first season was 2020, and he coached through 2023. So he led the Eagles to 22-26 overall record, and had 3 bowl game invitations, only played in 3 of those, one of those 3 games. But, that's the extent of his head coaching experience. So I think this is kind of an unknown, Joe. What can we really say about this guy as a head coach? He's never been one in the NFL, and really has limited experience in the college ranks. So although I like him, I hope he picked the right job for himself, because we've seen how this can go. If he has a bad start, and things don't go well for the first 2 seasons, he could find himself getting fired and maybe never getting another shot.
Yeah, and the thing is with Miami is, their ownership is kind of flighty, just like a lot of these owners now in modern football. And patience wears thin fast down in Miami. I guess it's something to do with the heat down there, because he's got to be given a long leash. You got the Patriots, who are 2 years ahead of him now because they're in the Super Bowl already. You got the Bills, who are still there and still going to be a good team, depending on who goes in there, or we know who's going there. Brady's going there, so we'll see how good Brady's going to be there. But And then you have the Jets, who right now they're tearing. I don't know what they're doing, but they're bringing back Frank Reich. Um, I don't know. We can go over them in the offseason. I'm not going to get into them. So, I mean, a lot of the three teams in their division are steps ahead of them. So it's going to be hard on Halfley, I think. Go ahead.
Yeah, I agree. And then also, something that concerns me as well is the Packers defense kind of fell apart, after Micah Parsons went down. Yeah. That was the unit that he was responsible for. And this guy, you hire him up right after, that was kind of the reason they lost was their defense. I mean, Jordan Love threw 4 touchdown passes in that game that the Packers lost to the Bears. And so you got to put that loss squarely on the defense's shoulders. And that was Halfley's responsibility. Now, he's a skilled college coach and, certainly will hold his players accountable. Hopefully he learned a lot watching LaFleur in Green Bay. But, I just don't know. I guess it's kind of an unknown to me as to what he will, look like as a head coach.
Yeah, and let's see. We talked about Saleh. We've talked about Jesse Minter. Mike McCarthy ending up with Pittsburgh. Is it all contingent on him getting Aaron Rodgers to give one more year, or should he move on? And who's the Ohio State quarterback he's got behind? Isn't there no?
Will Howard.
Yeah, Will Howard. Start inventing Will Howard. Is that going to be the way to go?
I don't know. I mean, that's the big question here, because they're going to have to figure this out. I mean, that's been the biggest problem, for the previous regime was that they just couldn't get the quarterback position stabilized after Ben Roethlisberger left. Well, that's still the case. I love Mike McCarthy. I like what he did in Green Bay. I like what he did in Dallas. But let's be honest, he's brought in here to win a Super Bowl, and that's what he couldn't do in Dallas. So what is it that he's going to do in Pittsburgh, that's going to make it so he can win a Super Bowl when he couldn't do it in Dallas? I think, Dak Prescott's definitely a better quarterback than what they've got in Pittsburgh right now because they don't have anybody. They haven't convinced Aaron Rodgers to come back. They don't really have, a high draft pick that they can go out and get anybody. I don't really love any of the quarterbacks in this draft anyway.
Right.
And, I'm not sure, we'll get into the free agent list obviously here in a minute. But, I don't think Rodgers was bad for them.
No.
But, you bring him back again and then you have the same problem. You've got a 43-year-old quarterback and nobody else. So this has got to be, hopefully they've already discussed this and they have a plan.
Well, and like you said, Rodgers wasn't bad. It's just he's not Rodgers anymore. He's not the Rodgers of 5 years ago. He's had a major injury to his leg, Achilles, which, the Achilles ended how many people's careers? I mean, Kobe Bryant, we can go down the line. They say you never really recover from an Achilles. So, I mean, he's still a good quarterback. He's still got the mind. He just doesn't have the legs anymore. And that used to be a lot of his game, be able to extend plays and things. But, and like you said, are you really that close to a Super Bowl where you can take a bet on Rodgers and not start the clock on a new quarterback? You got Will Howard. How would you feel about them looking at a quarterback, not one of the top guys, because they're not, they don't have a chance at him, but bringing him in like a guy from the kid from Illinois. I'm just using him as an example, who played pretty well for Illinois last year, and giving him a look, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem with you're talking about Luke Altmaier, I'm guessing.
Yeah,
exactly. I like Luke Altmaier, and I think he's got some skills, but he doesn't have the NFL arm really. He's got good vision. He's got the ability he's played quarterback for a long time. He played for Ole Miss for a season, or half a season. Then he's played for Illinois for several years. He went to the Senior Bowl. This guy's got some experience now, but do I think he's ready to step in and play right away. Definitely not. And you've already got a developmental guy in Will Howard, who they drafted last year and have invested a year in. So right now, what you've got is Mason Rudolph, Will Howard. Mason Rudolph is a backup. Will Howard is a, developmental guy. So I think you have that kind of in place. What you need now is to either bring back Aaron Rodgers or, to get another veteran to get you through, a season until Will Howard's ready to play.
Okay. The last three spots were like the worst spots. I mean, I feel so sorry for these guys. Like Todd Monken, I understand there's only 32 jobs like this in the NFL, but if I was him, I would have done a year in New York just to see if something else came open before I'd have to take a Cleveland job with that ownership and the mess that he's walking into at quarterback himself there. That just makes no sense at all. So LaFleur with the Arizona Cardinals, another guy who doesn't really have a quarterback. Brissett is a free agent. They're not thrilled with what's his name, their other quarterback,
Kyler Murray.
Kyler Murray. So I feel sorry for Mike LaFleur because I felt sorry for him when the Jets gave him 1 year and then fired him when Saleh got there and didn't give him a chance to maybe prove himself as an O coordinator. I thought they pulled the plug on him too early. But to bet on him just because his brother's successful in Green Bay, I don't know. And then you got Clint Kubiak, who supposedly is going to be in Vegas, where another place where head coaches go to die.
Yeah, let's talk about Monken first. What a disaster of a coaching search. I mean, they had numerous people pulling out and removing their names from the list. Primarily, from what I've heard, is because the Cleveland Browns were insistent on keeping Jim Schwartz. Well, if you want to keep Jim Schwartz, why not just name Jim Schwartz the head coach?
Exactly.
This is a guy who has, created one of the best defenses in all of the NFL for 3 or 4 years now in Cleveland. He's got the respect of the entire team, certainly has the respect of the defense and the leaders of that team. Myles Garrett, obviously number one on that list. But you basically make your hiring as part of, the mix to these guys, telling them they're going to have to keep Jim Schwartz. And so a lot of guys are like, well, I don't want you picking my staff. They pull their name out of it. You hire Todd Monken, you piss off Jim Schwartz, and now he's not even going to be there. Right. So it's just an absolute joke. Whether or not Todd Monken would make a good head coach, I have no idea, but I doubt we're going to find out, watching him be there in Cleveland, because they don't have a quarterback either. In fact, they have like 5 of them. So that means you have 0. And as far as Arizona goes, what has Mike LaFleur really done? He was the play caller for the Jets and they had a horrible offense going on. And then he was the offensive coordinator for the Rams, but he wasn't even calling the plays.
No, McVay calls the plays.
Sean McVay calls the plays. Sean McVay designs the plays. Sean McVay puts the schemes together. So what the hell does Mike LaFleur do? I guess he had the title of offensive coordinator, but he wasn't calling plays. He wasn't putting the schemes together. He wasn't involved in developing, Matt Stafford. So what has this guy really done besides being the brother of the LaFleur in Green Bay? I don't know, but I've got a strong feeling that there's going to be another coach in Arizona in 3 years.
I definitely believe that, and Kubiak will put for another day when he finally. But again, another guy. What's he going to do? Another bad ownership. It is so bad right now in the NFL. The contrast between good owners and bad owners, that there's too many bad owners now. There's just too many, and that's why you see. You see constant change in a lot of ways, but I mean, the good owners, it took only 2 years, 3 years for Bob Kraft to get his team back to the Super Bowl. I mean,
yeah, because he went out and, he tried, he gave the job to Gerard Mayo. Things didn't really go well. There was some issues in the locker room, as well as, on the field, and he didn't like where things were headed. He saw an opportunity to bring in somebody that could fix it right away. I don't think anybody thought he was going to fix it in 1 year, but he did, and look where they are, and that's called good ownership. Now, at least Kubiak has a lot of experience in the league. He's done a tremendous job this year in Seattle. He's actually a play caller, so I think he will continue to call plays. And then, they do have the number 1 pick in the draft, so they can go out and they can get, the best quarterback available, which I think we all kind of assume that is Fernando Mendoza from Indiana. So if they can bring in Mendoza, if they can get a veteran to come in and maybe start the first few games so that Mendoza doesn't have to, maybe they'll be all right. But let's be honest, the Raiders aren't going to be any good until they get an offensive line. That was the problem this year. They couldn't run the football. Geno didn't really have time to throw the football because their offensive line was absolute garbage. And until they fix that, they're going to be in no man's land. But I'm interested to get your take on the Buffalo situation. I don't think me and you really had a chance to talk about it. They fire a guy who's won 10 games 7 years in a row, and they hire a guy who's never been a head coach. What do you think about Joe Brady taking the head job at Buffalo?
It's going to be real interesting. I mean, Joe Brady, well, I think they had to bring in somebody that they knew could work with Josh Allen. I think experimenting outside, I don't think Josh Allen would have been, the kind of guy who would raise a fit because they didn't get the coach he wants. But I think that's what the Bengals were really looking at, was a comfort level with Josh Allen. McDermott is a defensive guy, and he's been there for Josh Allen's whole career. And maybe they just felt like you need an offensive perspective to come in here and run the team and not be so dependent on Josh Allen. Maybe, but again, his play calling didn't take that away from him either. So it's going to be interesting. It really is a stretch, but who else out there was there? Once Harbaugh was gone, I think if they had fired McDermott a week earlier, they would have made a strong push for Harbaugh. Would Mike McCarthy have been a better choice just because of his experience? Probably. But maybe Joe Brady and Josh Allen got this thing together that they're betting on.
Yeah, no, and I like this guy. I do. I think he's been, obviously had one of the greatest offenses of all time in LSU and has done a decent job in Buffalo. I think at times he's got called under fire by some of the issues on the Buffalo offense. But really, I think that's been more personnel than it is Joe Brady's play calling. I think they've kind of lacked a number 1 receiver ever since Stephon Diggs left. They've had, injuries at the other wide receiver and tight end positions that have hurt them. But they finally found a running back, that can tote the rock. And, Joe Brady rode him hard this year, and that seemed to work. And, now he's gone out and hired Jim Leonard as the defensive coordinator. And he runs an attacking style of defense, which is a little bit of a change from what Sean McDermott does or has done. And I think, let's just be honest, man. I think what we've seen in the NFL is that after a great deal of time, sometimes, the message goes stale. And I think that may be kind of what happened with the defense in Buffalo. That was kind of their Achilles heel this past year. And, if we think that they've wound up in a good place here in Buffalo, I think it could be good. I mean, I don't know what Joe's going to do as a head coach, but he certainly sounds like he knows what he's doing. And he's going to keep calling the plays. And then I think he's going to, kind of let Jim Leonard run the defense while also keeping tabs on it. And, I wasn't as shocked about this as everybody else. Everybody was just all had their panties up in a bunch about McDermott getting fired. Well, Bill Belichick got fired Okay, he won
Harbaugh
6 Super
fired.
Bowls. John Harbaugh got fired, who won a Super Bowl.
You and I discussed it during the
Pete
season.
Carroll got fired.
But I mean, you and I were discussing this during the season that McDermott and Harbaugh had to be under the microscope because both of them they have two of maybe the 2 best quarterbacks right now, talent. Like, well, you have Mahomes in there, so I won't say that. But definitely you have
top 3.
Yeah, and they're the only 2 that haven't been to. I mean, Brock Purdy's been to a Super Bowl. You can name go down. Jalen Hurts has been to 2 Super Bowls, and you're walking down the line going, well, I got Josh Allen and I got Lamar Jackson MVPs, but you can't get them to the Super Bowl. At some point, you gotta look at the head coach and go, well, when is this going to change? When can we at least get to a Super Bowl? And this year,
and he hasn't gotten them close. Yeah, and he hasn't really gotten them close.
Right, and especially with the fact that Mahomes was out, and you go out relatively early. But it's just someone's got to be blamed, and you're not gonna fire your all-time, maybe the best quarterback in their history. I don't know. Jim Kelly's right up there, but I would take Josh Allen. But Jim Kelly at least got you to 4 Super Bowls. You lost them all, but got you to 4.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good to get to 4 straight Super Bowls. That's pretty impressive. And this guy's gotten you to 0. And let's be honest, several of the times that they didn't make it to the Super Bowl, it was his fault. That 13-second game where he chose not to squib kick it, all he had to do was kick the ball on the ground and 3 to 4 seconds run off, and they have no chance of getting down there and kicking that field goal. There's no way. And so I put that on him.
Yeah, and the one guy you have to tell your defense is do not let him find Kelsey.
And
whatever you do,
they threw it to him 3 times in a row.
Right, exactly.
So I put that loss on him, and let's be honest, he's the guy in charge. And yeah, they've had 7-10 win seasons in a row, and they haven't even gotten to the championship game. So I put that on him, and I wasn't shocked that he got fired. I don't understand why everyone else was. The Patriots fired the best coach of all time. The Seahawks fired Pete Carroll, who won a Super Bowl, took him to another one, and lots of people have moved on from coaches. And look here, this season, Harbaugh's been there for 18 years. The Steelers coach had been there for 19, and they both moved on. So why is it such a big deal that the Bills did that?
No, I think it's, if nothing, I don't want to say expected, it could be predictable. That is what it is. Let's get to our choices for the winning team. I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I mean, I want the Patriots to win because I love Mike Vrabel, and I just like this team for some reason. The way that I'm not a Patriots fan by any stretch, but I do like this group. I think they're a gritty bunch of guys. That being said, I think the team that is playing the best in the NFL right now is the Seattle Seahawks. I think the play calling's been immaculate. Jackson Smith and Jigba is the best wide receiver in all of football at the moment, and this defense just plays their guts out all game long. That being said, the special teams, the defense, the offense put it all together, and I think that the Seahawks are the best team. And I think that the Patriots getting here has just been magical. But I think they're ahead of schedule, and I think maybe a year or two they'll be back. But I think I'm taking the Seahawks. I'm going to go 27 to 19 Seahawks.
Okay. I'm going to stick with the Northeast. I'm going to go with the Patriots. I don't know. Maybe it's my heart over my head. I do fear the Seahawks. I give them ultimate respect. I think that Vrabel's experience as a player and seeing the things that he had to do as a player to win. And remember, those games were close. They were won by field goals. So I think he's seen what is a good game plan, what's a bad game plan, how to get his team ready for it and have them prepared. That's one thing they always say is, it's the coaches have been there before. It's the first. It's that how to use the 2 weeks to maximum advantage and getting your team ready to prepare and ready to get out there before it's about who gets tickets, who gets this. Let's go to this show. Let's go to that show. How many interviews they're going to do. So I think that's going to come through a little bit more for Vrabel. And like I said, I will admit it's hard overhead, but I'm going to pick the Patriots. I'm going to say it's going to be the Patriots. The big thing I feel for the Patriots is they got to keep the score down. So I'm saying 21-13 Patriots.
I hope you're right because I want the Patriots to win, but I've got a feeling that the Seahawks are going to win. Wanted to get your take on Tom Brady, who was, interviewed on the Let's Go podcast, and Jim Gray asked him, what he thought about the Patriots making it back into the Super Bowl and all this, and he said, "I don't have a dog in this fight, and I just want the best team to win, and I don't really care who wins this game." And several of his former teammates have called him out and said, basically Vince Wilfork said, "That's bull crap, Tom.
Yeah.
You claim to be a Patriot for life and, claim that you're this Patriot legend and the Raiders who you're supposedly a part owner of aren't even in the game and you can't even cheer for the Patriots." I thought it was pretty cool that Vince Wilfork called his ass out. And I think him saying that he doesn't have a dog in this fight and doesn't care who wins, I think that's pretty piss poor from a guy who played for this team for 20 years.
Well, I agree with you, and it reminds me a lot of 2007 when Tiki Barber had just retired, and he was attacking Coughlin and Eli before the Super Bowl and during their playoff run about their leadership and everything else, even though Coughlin basically saved his career by teaching him not to fumble so much. And the fact of the matter is he gave up on the Giants. Giants did not give up on him. He wanted to start his after football career and thought he was going to be, what Michael Strahan became as the, this guy on every show in town instead of, doing radio like he's doing now and working for and in fact, the Giants or he does some broadcasts on the weekend. So I'm going to say I've seen it before. I hope it works out for Tom like it did for Tiki, and he looks foolish afterwards. And like I said, that was one of those situations in where Tom should go back to his Bill Belichick teachings. It's best not to say anything. Just sit there and
just don't comment on it.
I'm in the broadcast booth now. I'm just, that's what I do now. I love the Patriots. That's all you have to say. Walk away from it.
Yeah. Well, he didn't, and he looks like an idiot.
Yeah. One thing before we go away, Belichick not making the Hall of Fame. I think it's about time if we're going to have a Hall of Fame, you got to take it. These voters just don't get it right. They bring their personal aspect into it. I like how Jimmy Johnson came out and defended him. We did it too. We tried it too. It didn't work for us. So, all this stuff that comes out, all coaches stretch the rules. They all try and get away with something at some point. But the fact of the matter is his success is undeniable. And for 11 people out of out of 50 voters, I think, 11 people to sit there and say, no, he doesn't belong in the Hall of Fame is ridiculous. Then you don't belong to have a vote. First of all, for the most part, why are we even voting? You know who should be in the Hall of Fame. You know who the best players are. It's the borderline guys that got to worry about it. So what is the big deal? And I could go over from Otis Taylor to a bunch of guys from the 60s and 70s who should be in the Hall of Fame. But the fact of the matter is they didn't throw the ball enough back then for his wide receiver stats to look that good. So, it's just a ridiculous thing.
If Bill Belichick isn't a Hall of Famer, then who the hell is? It's just like, the baseball doesn't let anybody in. NBA basketball lets everyone in. And I thought we had the football, which actually had it figured out. and had a pretty good process. Well, here we go now, finding out that even football is now screwed up. And not only did they not do the right thing and vote in the greatest coach of all time, they also then leaked it out that he wasn't getting in, and made the whole thing a complete mockery. So I just think the whole thing is disgusting. And, do I think that owners should really get in? Probably not, but they've let some owners in. And so if you're going to let owners in, how can you not let an owner in who's won 6 championships in 20 years and has his team back in again? How does he not get in? It's an absolute joke, and it's embarrassing. And I hope all those people are embarrassed, because they should be. And Bill Polian is the one that should be the most embarrassed, because he got called out for essentially standing on a soapbox telling people not to vote for Bill Belichick. And then when he got, stuck a microphone in front of his face, he basically lied and said that he did vote for him and that was all untrue. So, Bill Polian definitely holds a grudge after he got his ass kicked in Buffalo 4 years straight. And then he goes to Indianapolis and wins 12 games 10 times and wins 1 Super Bowl. He's jealous of the Patriots. And it's pretty obvious that he's still jealous and still butthurt about it. And I think Bill Polian should have acted like a Hall of Famer in this instance and pushed people to vote for Bill instead of holding a grudge and acting like a dumbass kid. I hope he's embarrassed, because the whole thing was embarrassing.
Like I said, I just don't get I just don't get how you could like I said, even beyond Polian, who are the 10 other guys? And you know what? They should, in this kind of a case, you should have to defend why you did and why you didn't. If you really believe it should be an honor to be on that committee voting people in. So if you're going to vote against somebody, at least come out and say, I didn't like his attitude. I thought he cheated. I thought he did it. Be one of these guys that sit there and go, give me Tom Brady and I'll do it. I don't agree with that, because I think Belichick invented Tom Brady in a lot of cases. I think if you look at it, Brady is Frankenstein's monster there. But, maybe Belichick and Brady will go in together.
Yeah, well, maybe that would mean they don't vote him again next year, which would be even stupider. If you're not going to vote Bill Belichick in this year because of Spygate or whatever you want to say, well, then you can't vote Tom Brady in because of Deflategate and all the things he was involved in. So, let's be a little bit more hypocritical here, because that's what we do in this country.
That's the other thing that just gets you, is the fact of the matter is, I understand baseball too. It's like, well, what did this guy do in the last 10 years that he's suddenly a Hall of Famer? You know what I mean? All of a sudden they make a guy swing in the wind for 10 years, 5 years, whatever it is, hasn't touched a football in 5 years, but now he's a Hall of Famer. But 5 years ago he wasn't. I mean, I just don't get it. I'll never get it with that. So, I think and everybody's opinion counts, but I think that some people's opinion and not voting for these people is just crazy. So that's enough for that. All right. End of the football season, my friend. Hopefully it's going to be a good game this weekend. If nothing else, let's get us a good game. I'd like to see an exciting ending, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, like I said, I hope you're right. I hope the Patriots win. I like the team. I like the guys they have. I love Mike Vrabel, a former Buckeye, and I really hope that the Patriots do win. But like I said, I think the Seahawks are just the better team, and I'm worried about Drake May's injury.
Yep, we'll take a look. Everybody, enjoy the game, and we will be back next week, and we'll take a look at what happened in the game. Have a good one, my friend.
Sounds good, bud.